Okay.
And it seems we're live, so I think we can start this event. Welcome everyone to this online panel discussion organized by the World Uyghur Congress and the Uyghur Human Rights Project. My name is Koen Stoop, and I'm the EU representative of the World Uyghur Congress. And almost 1 year ago, on December 9th, 2021, the Uyghur Tribunal released its final judgment, following 18 months of reviewing all the available evidence and 3 in-person hearings. Its verdict concluded that the Chinese government has committed crimes against humanity and genocide against the Uyghurs and other ethnic Turkic peoples. The Uyghur Tribunal has been a crucial exercise to assess the nature of the Chinese government's actions, especially since the traditional international justice mechanisms, such as the ICC and ICJ, are practically blocked. Now, 1 year later, as the Uyghur community commemorates the Uyghur Genocide Commemoration Day, we will reflect on how these findings have been applied in practice and how advocates, experts, and scholars can continue to pursue justice and accountability for continued abuses. Before I head over to our brilliant speakers, I would just like to mention that this panel discussion is live streamed on our Twitter Spaces and on YouTube. And for any questions or comments, please use the streaming on the Uyghur Human Rights Project's YouTube channel. Without further ado, I will now give the floor to our speakers for their brief opening remarks. And first up, I would like to introduce Mr. Omer Kanat, who is the Executive Director of the Uyghur Human Rights Project, a human rights research and advocacy organization based in Washington, D.C. He has 2 decades of experience as a broadcast journalist. From 1999 to 2009, Mr. Kanat was the senior editor at Radio Free Asia's Uyghur Service, where he covered the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, edited Uyghur language news, conducted exclusive interviews with prominent figures in Inner Asia, including His Holiness Dalai Lama, and reported on breaking news around the world. Mr. Kanat helped found the Uyghur Human Rights Project in 2003, as well as the World Uyghur Congress in 2004. He has served as Vice President of the World Uyghur Congress since 2006 and Chairman of the World Uyghur Congress Executive Committee since 2017. He holds a Bachelor in History from Istanbul University's Faculty of Science and Literature with a focus on political history and studied at the Munich Institute of Economics and Trade. Mr. Kanat is fluent in English, German, Uyghur, Turkish, Persian, Tajik, Dari, and Uzbek, and is functionally proficient in Kyrgyz and Kazakh. Omer, the floor is yours. It seems he is frozen, so let's give it a minute to see if he can reconnect. It seems that we've lost Omer, so maybe we can start with the next speaker, and maybe if Omer comes back, he can take over. Then I'd like to give the floor to Siobhan Allen, who is the legal officer and consultant solicitor at Global Legal Action Network. She conducts innovative transnational legal actions, challenging states and other powerful actors involved with human rights violations, with the focus on the collation and verification of open source digital evidence of international law violations for use in litigation and supply chain accountability. From 2017 to 2018, Siobhan used to be an RSD Senior Legal Officer, Refugee Legal Aid Program at St. Andrews Refugee Services, where she was responsible for the provision of legal advice and representation to urban refugees in relation to claims for refugee status determination. From 2018 and 2019, she used to work as a legal officer at Media Legal Defense Initiative, where she used to do strategic litigation at the European Court of Human Rights, African Regional Human Rights Courts, Inter-American Courts of Human Rights, and other regional and international bodies. Siobhan, I'll give the floor to you now, and Omer, maybe we can come back to you after Siobhan's remarks.
Okay. I lost the connection, sorry.
Great, thank you so much, Koen. Well, first, I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me to be part of this very distinguished panel. I'm honored to share it with our other guests. There are so many different aspects to the atrocities that are happening in East Turkestan. It's impossible for one organization to tackle them all. So from our perspective, we each need to take an angle and a region of the world to act in to together create a coordinated global effect. And the Coalition to End Uyghur Forced Labor, which we are part of, has been amazing in doing this. As you mentioned, we at GLON have a particular mandate in devising innovative transnational legal actions to challenge systemic injustice and power structures. So we have been working with the World Uyghur Congress very closely for a few years now on this issue. In 2020, we and World Uyghur Congress and UHRP commissioned a legal opinion from Essex Court Chambers that concluded early last year that there was evidence of genocide and crimes against humanity in the region. I believe that was the first legal opinion on the point, and as you all will recall, led to sanctions being imposed on the barristers that wrote it. Since then, we've obviously seen further opinions published and several parliaments declaring genocide as well. Since then, our work has focused very much on two particular legal cases. We were trying to look at the economic drivers behind what's happening and the industries that are benefiting from the policies in East Turkestan. This angle focuses very much on the fact that power is in money, and so we need to make it hurt for people to stay involved in this. We looked specifically at supply chains in the cotton industry in particular, where already back in 2019, 2020, there was significant evidence of Uyghur forced labor. And so we were looking at who are the recipients and the beneficiaries of this supply, where are goods going, who's buying them, and who's allowing them to be traded around the world. So by challenging the countries that are importing the goods, we were seeking to disrupt the economic markets for them. In the time since then, we've obviously seen the huge progress that's been made in the US with the passing of the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, which essentially prohibits the import of items from East Turkestan on the basis of a presumption they've been made with forced labor. So while that's obviously been an excellent step, the focus now must be on pressuring all regions to take a harmonized approach, because the risk is otherwise that other regions then become a dumping ground for tainted goods. So our legal cases that we've been working on for the last few years target the UK and the EU via Ireland. The case in the UK is completed now, and we're just waiting for a judgment, whereas we're only just beginning the second case in Ireland with the hope of using it as a springboard to get a ruling that would bind all member states across the EU, so doing those sequentially. The timing of working on these cases over the last couple of years turned out to be really good. Those cases have been happening in tandem with the Uyghur Tribunal, which was so excellent for public awareness and pressure, by which in this context, by public, I mean within the government as well, and really elevating the issue to a global platform. And we actually used some of the testimonies that were submitted to the Uyghur Tribunal in the evidence that we filed with the High Court here in the UK, which was really helpful for our case. And the UN report was then published shortly before the hearing took place, which also platformed the issue really well. The Irish and EU case we're now hoping will be happening in tandem with the proposed new EU legislative instrument on forced labour. So again, we hope that there will be complementarity between those two work streams, as there are ways in which the Irish case is similar to that new legislative instrument and supports it, and then other ways in which it's much more specific. It's regionally focused. It's focused on East Turkestan and focused on state-sponsored forced labour as opposed to individual corporate actors. So that's just a very brief kind of background as to where our work fits in. And just to reiterate that from our perspective, it's so key for action on this issue to be coordinated, for us all to be collaborating and taking all of these various angles that we're all working at and making sure that they complement each other so that the final impact of all of our work will hopefully be greater than the sum of its parts.
Thank you so much, Siobhan. And that's very interesting to hear how the Uyghur Tribunal has made such a concrete impact also on further legal processes and further legal examinations of the human rights abuses that we're seeing in East Turkestan. So of course we'd be happy to hear further about these cases in the upcoming panel discussion. So now I would like to give the floor to Omer if you're here now and can hear us. I've already given a brief introduction, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Cohen. Sorry for disconnect. Yeah, good morning. This Friday is Uyghur Genocide Recognition Day. It has been 1 year since the final judgment of the independent UK Uyghur Tribunal. The judgment was delivered, as mentioned, on December 9, 2021. The conclusion, as you know, was that the Chinese government was committing genocide and crimes against humanity under international law. 1 year after the Uyghur Tribunal issued its landmark verdict, we can recognize, as mentioned, that we have taken steps forward. The implications of this determination of genocide continue to be shown. The momentous accomplishment of sorting through such massive amounts of evidence, including testimonies that should take the word cringe, stands forth as remarkable. We have seen more reports, statements, and recommendations from governmental and international bodies, as well as civil society organizations and think tanks. Many of these use the tribunal as a finding to inform their own work. And yet, we must acknowledge that the Uyghurs in East Turkestan continue to suffer. As the Urumqi fire proved, nothing has changed for the Uyghurs in East Turkestan. The tribunal demonstrated that it is necessary to work with the knowledge that the governments will not act without a strong push from organizations alongside others, our organizations alongside other key civil society partners. This push must come with expectation that there can be means of legal redress. Nothing can be bring back what has already been lost, but we can mitigate some of the suffering and act to ensure that the perpetrators are held to account. One of the key areas we should target are other international justice mechanisms. For one, our recent Argentina universal jurisdiction case is key. This is because these courts have jurisdiction for international crimes like genocide, crimes against humanity, and torture wherever they take place. We should replicate this action wherever possible in other European countries, especially. Our next target should be the International Court of Justice, which requires a state to bring a case while the ICC pursues the issue. While international attention has been rightfully paid to Ukraine and the cases of cultural destruction, why has this not been the case for Uyghurs? We must push for this to happen. The widespread cultural and physical destruction is enough to merit attention from the ICC. There has been widespread dismay over Michelle Bachelet's visit to East Turkestan. Even the recent vote on holding a special session on Uyghurs was immensely disappointing, but we must not lose sight of opportunities to continue to apply pressure in the United Nations. UN experts must continue to take up this case. We must ensure that there is a space at the UN level to discuss the report that has been produced following Michelle Bachelet's visit, and that China must fulfill its obligation and recommendations. The newly appointed High Commissioner for Human Rights must make sure that the Uyghur issue is a top priority. There are many untapped parts of UN that must be activated as well. The recent third decision stated that the UN advisor on the responsibility in protect should take this up. This indicates that there are still ways to bypass China's control within the UN and ensure that UN mandates are pursued. Uyghurs are at a breaking point. In our homeland and abroad, we are pressed from all sides. We face increasing transnational repression. The callous disregard for Uyghur lives have been shown to the world even these few weeks with the Urumqi fire, and the eyes of even the previously apathetic Chinese people have been open to the brutalities. This incident has served to magnify our pain and suffering. As the international community continues to awaken to reality, the significance of this genocide determination cannot be understated. The evidence remains. Time is running short for our people, but we have what we need to push onward. As the events of these few weeks demonstrate, eventually there is a breaking point, and accountability and justice will come. We must dedicate ourselves to acting in the belief that we can make it come faster. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Omar, and thanks for making this strong argument about why the Uyghur Tribunal has been a first step towards wider recognition of these atrocity crimes, and also as a first step to to lead to more concrete actions. And I think you've already highlighted some of the avenues that can be used to give justice and accountability for Uyghurs. And of course, we'll discuss these further. Next up, I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Elfidar Itzubi, who was born in Urumqi, East Turkestan, and grew up in Istanbul, Turkey, until immigrating to the United States in 2000. She has a bachelor in marketing from George Mason University and over 20 years of marketing and project management experience. She has taught the Uyghur language to US government employees. As the daughter of a prominent Uyghur writer and journalist, she is an active member of the Uyghur community and an outspoken human rights activist. In the last 3 years, she served as the Secretary General of the Uyghur American Association. With her excellent performance for the community and creative approaches to raise awareness projects, she was elected as the President of the Uyghur American Association in May 2022. She is currently a structure analyst in an energy firm and fluent in English, Uyghur, and Turkish. Alvidar, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. First, I would like to thank World Uyghur Congress, UHRP, and others for giving us this opportunity to speak. I'm going to keep it short as I'm recovering from flu. Everyone already mentioned what the Uyghurs are facing and the importance of the tribunal's result. So, as an Uyghur American in the US, as a community-based organization, we receive so many calls every day from the community members. Each one is unique, and you notice more and more that we are already dealing with survivor's guilt, that we feel guilty, even can't enjoy a meal. We're dealing with transnational repression, like Ömer Kanat mentioned. Even we are on the US soil, our activities being controlled by Chinese police, longhand. Our loved ones, our family members, relatives are held as an hostage back home, and they're trying to silence us, scared us, fear us. So besides all those, we also have the ongoing genocide. This is the 6th year. So many positive steps have been made, sanctions, visa restrictions, passing the 2 bills, Uyghur Human Rights Bill and the Uyghur Forced Labor Bills. However, it's not enough. Even though more than 7 countries and parliaments declared what's going on in China as genocide, we truly believe that there are more work to do. 7 or 9 shouldn't be enough, that all 50 countries that signed a letter at the UN should declare a genocide, because it is genocide. That is what it is. Currently, so basically China doesn't respond to any human rights arguments or condemnations from the countries. What they really respond is when it hit their pocket, we believe. So that's why passing the Uyghur Forced Labor Bill was very important. We all the organizations work hard, the community members, to pass this bill, and we are hoping to pass the similar bills. And UK, Canada, Australia, we are working on it, at the moment. However, that also needs to be pushed and pressured, we believe, because once China gets hit economically, we believe it will change their oppression, it will change their mind about this Uyghur genocide. The current bills that we're working on is Uyghur Human Rights Protection Act, which brings Uyghurs in the diaspora who are suffering into the free world, the safe haven, we could say, to the US or Canada or other, European countries, so they can at least have a little bit peace of mind. And it also can encourage more camp survivors to speak up and share the truth and what they've been through, because right now they're in the third world countries and they're still not feeling safe and not sharing a lot of stories. So that's one bill we want to focus, we've been working on, and we would like to pass as soon as possible. The second bill is, as you heard recently, that passed the House, the Uyghur Policy Act, which requires some sort of financial resources for the Uyghur activists. And we believe that's very important as well. As you see, most of us are in fear to protect our relatives. A few of us can speak up, but I think if there is more resources, more people can contribute to take the cause or work in the next level. And the second part of that Uyghur Policy Act is appointing a special coordinator for Uyghurs in the US. And we believe that's also very important. When now there is one special coordinator for Tibet, and I think that it's time to appoint someone for Uyghurs who can be the ambassador of the Uyghur cause in the US. And as you know, the world still follows the suit of US, the coordinates. We think it's also very important as an Uyghur Americans. I think I'm going to stop there. Just the recent Urumqi fire saddened all of us. The fact that the concentration camps are full, prisons are full, the forced labor factories are full, all the Uyghurs are transferred to inner China, and now the genocide is changing its face to starvation genocide type of thing, that Uyghurs' homes, our homes are turned, our houses, turned into prisons. So Chinese Communist Party is locking us up in our own home and then leaving us with starvation. And we have been complaining about this and shared many stories. I have a friend whose father was locked inside his office at the age of 47 and passed away because of this cruel, brutal lockdown COVID policy, under the COVID guise. So we need to watch out for the new tactics of CCP. They're changing the channels and continuing to decrease our population, continuing to killing more Uyghurs, continuing to basically the Uyghur genocide. And that's why I want to end with let's unite, let's work together days and night to save people's life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elvida, for these strong remarks. And I think you highlighted, the need and necessity of certain policy actions, such as the Uyghur Policy Act in the US and all other relevant initiatives that you've mentioned. I think that's something that we should also not forget, that policymakers and lawmakers do have a concrete role to play, and that we should, as advocacy organizations, also continue pushing them to stand up for Uyghurs and make their voices heard. To conclude this first part of the panel and to present another very concrete initiative that followed from the Uyghur Tribunal, we have the great pleasure and privilege to show a clip of a play titled "Break Their Lineage, Break Their Roots," which tells the real-life stories of Uyghur, Kazakh, and other Turkic Muslims who have been accused of three evils, namely separatism, extremism, and terrorism, by the Chinese state. It is written by Raminder Kaur, who served as a jury member for the Uyghur Tribunal. She's a professor of anthropology and cultural studies in the departments of anthropology and international development. She was awarded her bachelor's in social anthropology and art and archaeology, and a PhD at SOAS, University of London. She held postdoctoral research positions at Brunei University, University of East Anglia, and at the University of Manchester. She was previously a lecturer at the University of Manager. Raminder, if you're with us, may I ask you to present a brief introduction of the clip that we're going to see?
Yes, thank you for this invitation on this very esteemed panel. I'm currently in North India. I'm in a hotel lobby where the internet connection is a little bit better, and I apologize in advance if there's any background noise which suddenly erupts. I'm very heartened to hear everyone's speeches on the panel and the work that is being done on this issue. And it's all complementary work in various fields, various regions. And as Siobhan Allen said, we can think about an impact that can be greater than the sum of the parts. So I was a member of the Uyghur Tribunal, but today I'm going to concentrate on human rights theatre and its potential. And it's all based on survivors' actual experiences and words, what we call verbatim theatre. And later we'll show a clip that is based on a film of a performance of the play in November in London. So the idea for the play, Break Their Lineage, Break Their Roots, as you know, it's this is part of a term coming from Chinese officials and also the title of a Human Rights Watch report. It came about as I was sitting there as part of the Uyghur Tribunal, thinking about how to further publicise the testimonies of Uyghur, Kazakh and other Turkic Muslim experiences. Also to highlight the Uyghur Tribunal judgment of torture, crimes against humanity and genocide on the basis of forced sterilisation. So as part of the theatre group Sahaya Visions, I collaborated with Christine Bacon from a human rights theatre group called Ice and Fire to interview a few more people so as to learn more about their lives, especially before and after the atrocities. So we heard a lot about the actual crimes against humanity, etc. But we wanted to know more about them as people. And therefore, from those interviews and also from the Uyghur Tribunal testimonies, I was able to write a script to provide three-dimensional characters based on real-life people. So plans were made by Christine and myself to interview 5 people in English and in Uyghur with interpreters Rahima Mahmood, who's on this panel today, and Ekber Tursun. These interviews were combined with Uyghur Tribunal statements, and I wrote a first draft of the script, which had to be cut down. There's a lot of material from both the Uyghur Tribunal statements and also from our interviews. So I had to edit, and then together with actors and other members of the crew, we workshopped the play for a 1-hour performance on stage. We also included poetry and song. That was also highlighted in the play and on the Sahaya Visions website. We noted that poetry is a very potent form of resistance and also very poignant, and therefore we try to integrate it as much as possible into our creative work. So why did we do this? Even though there's a lot known about the atrocities that people have experienced in East Turkestan, there's still a lot of people who we, in our circle, we may not be fully aware of this, but there's a lot of people outside of this circle who are not aware of the details. And the play is playing a part in raising further awareness on the issues, opening itself to new audiences, where those audiences can also begin to relate to the people as human beings who went through these atrocities against them. So I think it's time to play the clip, and then Rahima would have a few comments about the play later.
Thank you so much, Raminder, and we're really delighted to
Your
have this
voice
play.
was being recorded at all times.
In one prison, the cell boss ended my physical abuse when he discovered that I was proficient in Mandarin. Many of the Uyghur inmates were not literate in Chinese, so he appointed me as the cell translator. The role gave me the opportunity to use Uyghur, but it was unsavory work. I had to spend hours with heroin addicts, thieves, rapists, and killers. They used Uyghur profanities I had never heard. As a linguist, this was interesting, but as a human being, their language was difficult to endure.
There were cameras even in the toilets.
3 minutes in the morning, then there was a bucket in the room for every other time.
We were always running out of toilet paper. I was assigned chief of my cell, so I was in charge of toilet paper, and I would give 1 piece or 3, and when we run out, we would have to use notebook pages.
Shower once a week.
5 minutes only. I had the same set of clothes the whole time I was there, even the underwear.
We were given steamed bread and very thin rice soup, nothing else.
Our food wasn't so bad. We had Chinese congee in the morning, and we had for lunch, usually it was rice and 2 kinds of toppings.
Every 15 days we had to be injected with unknown medication. A lot of people became delirious after this. Many women's periods stopped.
We had to sing before every meal, before every class, patriotic songs, and you have to sing them with enthusiasm.
Such small tortures were constant.
They would not allow me to sleep entire nights. One time I remember it was 2.5 days of interrogation without sleep.
When they cut my hair, I felt like officially I'm turning into a criminal. I just felt very humiliated because they did it in a really brutal way.
We had to put out our hair through the food flap and let them cut it.
I was detained in 4 separate prisons over a period of 15 months. Constant interrogation.
You set up this language movement to encourage separatism between Xinjiang and China, didn't you? Just as the Bengali activists did in Pakistan.
You cannot prove these allegations because they are in your imagination. You could keep beating me, tie me in a tiger chair, electrify me, hang me. But the problem is you have no evidence. If I had something to tell you, I would tell you. I only have the truth. I just want to help my people. Sometimes, as a human being, I thought, I want to live. I want this to stop. I'll just make something up. But it's hard to invent this because I did nothing. I said I'm innocent. I'm innocent. 6 months of this, and I tried to keep my stance by dignity. If I gave in to them, I knew what would happen. It's life imprisonment for such a serious charge as separatism or extremism. After 3 months, any kind of torture is useless. That's my personal experience. You can get used to it. For example, electrocution was only 20 minutes. After that, the electric baton has to recharge. That takes time, so you can take a rest. Beating, after your body bruises, you cannot feel anymore. So it just becomes part of your life because it is a life.
Every night, girls would be taken from their room. At first, I thought it was some sort of security check or something. I was taken one night. In the torture room, the cell has no camera. The first man to rape me arrived wearing a suit. He wore a mask and had glasses. Then 2 others arrived. They dragged me by my hair, hit my head against the wall. They touched me, pinched me, bit me, as if I was their property. Then they inserted an electric baton inside me, twisted it, and shocked me with it. That made me pass out.
I did not directly see the rape of women by the camp guards, but when the women came back into lessons, they moved heavily and could not bend or sit properly. Each night as I returned home from the camp, I felt sick. My tears were out of control. I couldn't eat properly. I would see water and then remember the students were not given enough water to drink. Severe insomnia in the night, walking back and forth. I began to tell my husband about what was happening, and it began to haunt us both.
When everyone was sleeping, we had to do night watch in 2-hour shifts. During this time, it's just you and the camera. I had that time to think. Usually I just look out the window. There was a stunted poplar tree I could see. I kept thinking what else I could do to get myself out of here. I thought about my mother, the people I love. I thought about the time when I was free, when I was traveling, enjoying my life. Somehow I always knew that I would have that life back again.
The psychological strength is so important. I often told the women in the cell, you need to stay strong. Always believe that you will be free one day. Those who gave up hope lost their minds.
In May 2017, we learnt about a new government policy. It was set up to promote ethnic unity, and it was called 5 Together.
Cook together,
Eat together,
study together,
travel together.
sleep together.
This meant that families of our background were paired with twin relatives from a Han Chinese background. Their aim was for all of China's ethnic groups to be as tight as seeds in a pomegranate. My relative was the leader of my husband's work unit, a high-ranking official. When he first came to stay with us, he brought his wife and child with him, and they stayed in our home for a week. After that, he would visit regularly, on his own.
Teach me how to cook your tasty food.
You must cut up the vegetables into small pieces so as to be easily fried.
Hold my hand.
My husband will be back soon.
Oh, what can he do? Why don't you sing a song? Why don't you dance for me? Come, sit next to me. You're beautiful.
Thank you.
Your food is delicious.
Thank you.
Let me kiss you.
I cannot stand the smell of alcohol.
Are you refusing me?
I'm sorry.
Sleep with me.
I cannot sleep with both you and my husband in the bed because you both snore and then I cannot sleep at all. I hope you understand.
If you don't treat me well, I'll write this up in my notes.
I prayed silently. Oh my God, do you see? Please get rid of this beast.
Men kim edim, nimi buldum, bilelmedim.
Who I once was, what I've become, I cannot know. Who could I tell my heart's desires? I cannot say. My love, the temper of the fates I cannot guess. I long to go to you. I have no strength to move. Through cracks and crevices, I've watched the seasons change. For news of you I've looked in vain to buds and flowers. To the marrow of my bones I've ached to be with you. What road led here? Why do I have no road back home?
Thank you for showing that clip, and I'd also like to thank the Arts Council for allowing the actors and ourselves to put this show on, and to the Uyghur people who helped us, especially Abduali Aoup, Kalbino Siddiq, and the other names, Ziadin, as well as Abdurrahim, and another person who we cannot name. There's one actor who we could not show their face as well due to the sensitive nature. So I'll pass this on to Rahima.
Thanks so much, Rahiminder, for giving us the opportunity to show this clip, and to just give a first reaction to this incredible and moving piece of theater. I would like to turn indeed to Rahima Mahmoud, who is an Uyghur singer, human rights activist, and award-winning translator. Rahima has worked closely with Uyghur survivors. She acted as a translator for the groundbreaking BBC report on systematic rape in the concentration camps, and interpreted for fact witnesses during the Uyghur Tribunal. As an activist, Rahima is a prominent voice for Uyghurs in the UK. She has worked as part of a coalition of activists to lobby Parliament during the Genocide Amendment, and on successful campaigns to rid the UK of the products of Uyghur forced labor. She's currently UK Director of the World Uyghur Congress, Executive Director of Stop Uyghur Genocide, and an advisor to the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China. Over to you, Rahima.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that kind introduction, and I feel so proud to be working as a UK Director for the World Uyghur Congress and part of this panel. I'm very grateful for Raminda using her skills as a scriptwriter to produce this powerful and important play. I know the stories of all the survivors, many of them I have translated myself, but still when I went to see this piece, I was moved to tears throughout. That is the power of storytelling. When you watch a piece of art like this, it makes the reality so much more immediate. It gives us a glimpse of the real human experience of this genocide. It reminds us that this is not something happening in a remote land. It is happening in our world, on our watch. So it is all of our responsibilities to do something about it. And one of the things that has been missing from the Uyghur movement is the use of art on the world stage to bring attention to our cause. And I have tried to do this with my music, and I know many other people have been trying too. And now Raminda is using theater to do the same. And there are so many more artists that could be creating work like this, but this play is a powerful start. So 1 year since the Uyghur Tribunal's verdict, I call on more artists to use their gifts to communicate the Uyghur experience. There is a unique power to art. This play shows us what that can achieve. Now I ask others to be inspired and use their own skills to create change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rahima, for these powerful remarks, and I think give a perfect ending to these opening remarks from our brilliant speakers. This leaves us with just over 10 minutes of panel discussion. So let's just move into that. I would very much like to start with a question to Mr. Omar Kanat, about the importance of the Uyghur Tribunal for the Uyghur people. Of course, we've seen several initiatives over the past years, such as the Essex Court Chambers and other assessments of the legal nature of the Chinese atrocity crimes. But Omar, from you, I'd like to ask you, what has the importance of the Uyghur Tribunal been for the Uyghur people? How have its proceedings been set apart from other initiatives? And as an Uyghur person, as an Uyghur activist, how have you experienced its proceedings and judgment? I believe you're muted, Omar.
Yeah, thank you, Khan. So it's very difficult for me as a Uyghur to speak, to say anything after watching this, so it has very powerful words were from Rahima, so it also reflects what I'm feeling now. So this is it is very difficult for me to speak now. I think it's more than what the Uyghurs think. It is. I think it's past time, to take action for the international community to stop this genocide. And we have a tool now, as I mentioned in my remarks, to go forward, to before the judgment of the tribunal, the independent tribunal. Many people, many say that when the U.S., because before the tribunal, U.S. administration made that determination that what the Chinese government is doing to Uyghurs is a genocide and crimes against humanity. But it didn't have that effect because many people thought that it was a political decision. So it was not. This decision was not made. This judgment was not made by a court or by a independent body. So it was a very good. For the Uyghur activists, for the Uyghurs, it was very good that this independent tribunal made this judgment and announced that what the Chinese government's treatment of the Uyghurs is a genocide, crime, and genocide and crimes against humanity. And this opened a lot of doors, opportunity for us to go with this judgment to the parliaments, to political bodies, to UN, to say that here is the judgment, here is an independent judgment. So then this was a kickoff for other countries also to consider this, and then many parliaments passed motions about the Uyghur genocide. But it is time to take action, as I said. Only the US has now a law and an active enforcement strategy to stop, at least stop the companies from profiting from Uyghur forced labor. Only 4 countries have imposed human rights sanctions on some of the perpetrators, UK, EU, Canada, and the US. These 4 need to impose more sanctions. It has been almost 2 years. In March 2021, they imposed that sanctions. And there should be a coordinated, action to stop this genocide. Uyghurs have been suffering for 6 years. It has been 6 years. Millions of people locking up in concentration camps. We don't know what's happening to them. And these 4 countries need more sanction. And also Australia now has a Magnitsky Act. It was passed. We came just, last week. I returned from a trip to Australia. We met with the government officials and parliament members. So the Australian parliament passed the Magnitsky Act unanimously last year. But it is not using it. They used it against against the Russian criminals in Ukraine. Imposed Magnitsky. Australian government imposed Magnitsky sanctions on Russian criminals in Ukraine. But when it comes to China, they didn't do anything. They haven't done anything. So no country has banned until now in spite of this ongoing genocide and judgment of the independent tribunal, and after passing motion by 10 parliaments in the world calling what the Chinese government has been doing as a genocide and crimes against humanity, after international human rights organization publishing reports calling it as crimes against humanity, even UN that maybe the crimes against humanity may happening. No country has banned international investment in companies like Dahua and Tencent, which are providing the tools of genocidal surveillance and control.
Indeed. Yes. Thank you so much, Omar. And as you're speaking, as you're calling, as you're expressing a call to action for government stakeholders, anyone to do something about the ongoing genocide, I think the legal actions that Siobhan has talked about, and these legal actions in the UK and Ireland. Maybe turning to you, Siobhan, briefly to ask you, what is the impact these cases would make? What are the hopes that you're having, and what would a positive outcome entail?
Yeah, and I think those remarks are very prescient when you talk about the Magnitsky Act existing in Australia, but it's not being used, it's not being implemented. That's exactly what our English case was getting at. So in the UK, there is legislation that could be used to tackle imports of cotton from East Turkestan that have been made using forced labor, but the authorities are not using them. There's customs legislation that could enable some goods to be impounded at the border, and there's proceeds of crime legislation that means that dealing in these goods and in the profits that companies are making from them could be money laundering offences. And so what our case in the UK was about was challenging the UK authorities' position where they have not investigated any imports, they've not investigated any retailers, they're not even looking at these supply chains. So in terms of impact and where we see these cases going, so in the UK, as I mentioned, the case is completed, we've already had the hearing, and so we're waiting for a judgment now on that. Interestingly, the issue in the case was not around whether there is such a prevalence of Uyghur forced labor in cotton supply chains globally. That was essentially accepted by both parties and accepted by the governments. And instead, we ended up in a legal fight about, well, when do you have to start using the legislation that exists? When do you have to start investigating? What level of evidence do you need before you even open an investigation to see whether laws are being breached? So obviously we're hoping to win that case and get a ruling that has the effect of confirming that it is a breach of UK customs and criminal laws to import forced labor cotton from East Turkestan. And ultimately, although much further down the line, given the stage that the proceedings are at, the springboard case in Ireland is intended to get a ruling that would have the same effect, but across the EU as a whole. So it would bind all member states so that we could have a solid legal ruling that is binding, that says these laws already exist and they need to be implemented. And it's long past time for the authorities across the EU and the UK to be just turning a blind eye and failing to use the tools and the powers that they've already got. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean that the UK government would be forced to open any investigations, because the court doesn't have the power to order the authorities to do that. But it would mean that a court would declare that the procedure the government is currently using to justify its inaction on the issue entirely is unlawful. So it would force the government to go back and formally reconsider what they're doing. We would also hope that a positive judgment would also change retailer behavior. So if there's a threat hanging over their heads of goods being impounded, if they continue to use these supply chains, of their profits being confiscated, of potential criminal prosecutions, that continuing the status quo as it is might actually be breaching criminal law, we hope that that might actually shift up some of these global supply chains and force greater action within the economic sectors, within the corporate sectors. And then, of course, we obviously want to continue to raise awareness and increase the pressure on all angles. So again, to go back to my point about coordinated action, we want the legal cases to be increasing that political pressure as well. While all of these other political actions are continuing in Canada, in Australia, in the UK, in the EU, we want all of that to be working in tandem to make it very clear that we as a community working on this cause are not going away. We are not going to stop talking about this. We are not going to stop coming at it from all angles that we possibly can. And hopefully some binding legal judgments will add to that pressure to enact very specific and stronger laws to make sure that these issues are being tackled.
Thanks, Siobhan. And indeed, we often get the question, from consumers, from concerned citizens about, what can we do as consumers? What can we do as civil society? And I think these cases show that, we do have a lot of power and maybe even a responsibility to, take action and ensure that those who are complicit or profiting from these abuses are held to account, and, that we do everything in our power to also add to the political pressure. So I think these legal actions really speak for that argument that, there is an opportunity, concrete opportunity as citizens, as civil society to do something. And I believe more information about the cases is indeed available on the websites of the Global Legal Action Network and the World Legal Congress. So anybody interested in that can definitely read more about that there. Moving on, also, both within these legal cases, but definitely also within the Uyghur Tribunal, the accounts from Uyghur women really have been crucial. It's often, I think, underestimated about the role that Uyghur women have played in the Uyghur cause and to bringing the atrocities to light. So maybe turning to Elfidar, how do you see this, and what are the challenges linked to human rights activism, being an Uyghur woman?
Thank you, Cohen. Being a Uyghur woman, and let's add that to being a mom, I am very concerned of our kids and our future, honestly. Let me start with this. The Uyghur children in East Turkestan right now are being raised as Uyghur-looking Chinese mind, new generation. They're taken to state-run orphanages, boarding schools, kindergartens, that those facilities controlled by the CCP, and they're stripped away from their language, their religion, their identity, and they're chanting CCP and raising like that. So I'm really scared and fear about the future in my homeland, about my homeland. So what can we do as a Uyghur woman? What can we do, Uyghur mother? First, here in the diaspora, we should continue to preserve and promote our culture, our language. That is also one important aspect of keeping our identity, keeping the Uyghurness. Besides that your question was about activism, we should inspire the woman power. I think Uyghur women are very hardworking and they have a high level of tolerance. They adjust and they dedicate themselves for their people, for their cause. Of course, men too, but they have more responsibility to, take care of the family. So women, I think they're better with multitasking and focusing on what they want. So that's why I think we should empower Uyghur youth, especially the Uyghur girls, to take more serious responsibilities and speak up about the truth and coordinate with other organizations, other think tanks, and government engagements. Those are the things I'm thinking of right now. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Elfidar. And I think your remarks really speak to the incredible power and impact that Uyghur women have made on the Uyghur cause. And that's not something that we should forget. And also from my personal side, I'm really honored to work together with so many, powerful Uyghur women. Example of this being Rima. So Rima, maybe to give you the final, the final word in this event. how have you noticed the impact of the tribunal in the UK as a UK-based initiative? Are there any any comments you would like to make on this aspect?
Thank you for giving me the final words. So in light of the tribunal's judgment, we called upon the UK government to accept that the threshold for serious risk of genocide had been met and that convention obligations had therefore been engaged. So this was followed up with motions in Parliament calling on the government to assess the risk of genocide in the region, so in East Turkestan. And still we are calling on signatories of the Genocide Convention to meet their responsibilities under international law and protect the Uyghurs from cultural and physical destruction. The fact that this is the first and only genocide determination to made on the basis of forced birth prevention measures means that Uyghur women, their trauma and their bravery in speaking out was central to the tribunal's judgment. And we want to communicate this to civil society in the UK and rally the global women's movement around this cause. So the tribunal's judgment has added so much authority to our campaign, the professionalism of the process, the space it gave survivors, and the huge bank of evidence it collecting is invaluable. So I would like to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rima. I couldn't have concluded it better myself. And I think the discussion that we had today and all the remarks from our brilliant speakers really show the impact that the Uyghur Tribunal has had, its importance, its concrete efforts that it has led to. And over the course of the next few days, the World Uyghur Congress and other Uyghur groups will continue discussing the Uyghur Tribunal and its importance, as there will be several other webinars, press conferences organized. So please do keep an eye out for those. They will definitely be posted on the social media accounts, both of the World Uyghur Congress as well as the Uyghur Human Rights Project. So on that note, I would like to thank also the Uyghur Human Rights Project for co-organizing this event. I would like to thank our brilliant speakers for participating, and also to Raminder specifically to give us the opportunity to show the very strong and moving clip of this theater play. So on that note, I would like to conclude this panel discussion, and wish you all a good day.
Thank you.